co-host Li Xing, and I will go over the week's most important and interesting news coming out of the global EV, AV, and mobility sectors. What Lei and I discussed today is based on our opinions and should not be taken as investment advice. For those that are new to the show, welcome. And for our loyal listeners, welcome back. We ask that you please help us get the word out to other enthusiasts about this podcast. And of course, tune in again next week. My name is Tu Li. I'm the managing director at Sinowato Insights, a global management consultancy that helps organizations bring innovative and tech-focused products and services to the transportation and mobility sectors. I write a free weekly newsletter that we pull many of our discussion topics from. You can sign up for it on Substack at sinowatoinsights.substack.com, which of course I encourage you all to do. Lei, a hurried Lei, can you please introduce yourself?
On the road for 20 days since the start of our trip to Shenzhen on April 28th, Lei. Just got back to Beijing, sat down in the apartment, Lei. And this is episode number 164, and I am your co-host, Lei Xing, former chief editor of China Auto Review. Yes, I just... You literally step into the door, sat down, set up the equipment, returning from Shenzhen via the overnight sleeper train, which is a great way if you want efficiency and kind of bang for the buck, combining hotel and travel into one. It's $160 for the train ride. So if you want efficiency, you do that. But if you want fun, you do what we did 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago.
Has it been 3 weeks?
It has. It's been 20 or 21 days exactly since we left on 20 days. We left on Sunday morning, the April 28th.
Wow.
So, and I've been outside of Beijing ever since then. The road trip, the Volvo China Open, and then I just came back from this TechBus China investor EV trip that I helped organize, and we've visited a bunch of companies and cities. What do you want to talk about first?
Well, we can talk about the tariffs. Let's talk about the tariffs.
Yeah, we can talk about the tariffs.
So you and I gave our opinions to some media outlets, I think. So what do you think?
America is not going to protect itself into the EV glory that we're seeing in China and the rest of the world that are happening. That's number one. And two, election year, it's all politics. That's, put it out there and see what happens. And third, it's not going to do anything for now because the Chinese brands are not yet in the US. They could still be, even with the 100% tariff, they could still be competitive EV products, even if they take the 100% EV tariff. So those are my 3 points.
So I what was your second point again?
We have to listen back to the recording. I forgot.
You said it's all politics. I actually don't believe that. I actually think that the Biden administration is truly fearful that the US3 would get gutted. So because I'm here in Detroit, so I'm hearing a lot. I'm getting a lot of queries about for my opinion. Yeah, I don't know. So the thing is, if the Chinese EV company started shipping to the United States, it wouldn't immediately hurt the US3 because they all really build trucks and SUVs. So, if some SUVs were being shipped, then it could be damaging. But the sedans, the small A-class, B-class sedans and crossovers, that would actually hurt the Koreans and the Japanese more in the U.S. market, Volkswagen a little bit. So I think with Biden, it is so with Biden making 100%, because the 25% was already kind of made it unattractive. The 100% completely makes it unattractive. But as soon as Trump said he'd double it to 200%, then it really became all about politics and trying to outdo each other. So I don't know. I feel that this might buy the US 2.5, 3 years. But you saw there's an article in the New York Times, I think it was New York Times or Wall Street Journal, that Tesla is currently shipping Chinese made or from Shanghai Giga Model 3s and Ys or Model 3s to Canada. So in order for the US tariffs to be really effective, they're going to need Mexico's cooperation. And to a lesser extent, they're going to need the EU's cooperation. So I'm wondering if the Biden administration has that buy-in. I don't know if they do.
And we heard, so the BYD Shark recently launched and revealed in Mexico, and we've heard Stella Lee basically on the record saying, we're going to focus on Mexico, we're going to focus on South America. U.S. is not we're not looking to export into the U.S., at least not now. And it's not, this tariff hike is not affecting us, right? That's what she basically said. There's elsewhere, markets elsewhere that are more attractive, that the U.S. can be in the back burner a little bit. But I'm certain, right? We've talked about this. Preparations are ongoing, regardless what tariffs are in place.
Without question.
Yeah.
There are some Chinese EV brands that I know that are talking to some states in the U.S. I think post January, February of 2025, we might even start hearing some announcements about partnerships. There was that article last week that CATL is talking to multiple OEMs, and it doesn't have to be the US 3. It could be Volkswagen. It could be, because Volkswagen has invested heavily in the Goshen, but maybe they need a second source. Maybe it's the Koreans that want to build in the United States. So,
and
lots of moving parts.
And the other detail of that announcement I thought was interesting was a 7.5% going up to 25% on the EV batteries and the non-EV batteries. But that doesn't, that is not the intended, if you're trying to cut China off that equation, that doesn't do anything. Because if we're just talking about batteries, then, more often than not, these other, the LGs, the Panasonics, have cut China off their supply chain, and the battery supply chain? I don't think so. So the battery tariff hike itself, it does nothing to really, cancel or erase China off of that chain, right?
And if we're looking at it from a competitive standpoint, it could give the US 3 a false sense of security, and they could end up building terrific ICE vehicles for a longer period of time and lose focus on the clean energy side, so that although in the US they make great ICEs, they're not very competitive anywhere else in the world with their products.
Yeah, that's exactly kind of what I told BBC on that little interview I did a few days ago. And like the question came up, are the EVs made in China better than those in the US? I kind of laughed, and I wish I had said more yeses. I said 4 yeses. It's like, is that even a question? Right? You and I, just one model, the Xpeng G9 was already great as a EV for a long trip that we did. And that's among the hundreds on offer in the market.
And just to be clear, I'm not getting paid by any of these Chinese EV brands.
No.
To do any marketing or any influencing. So, and it pains me to say these things sometimes. I want to give credit where credit is due. And right now, all the credit goes to China EV Inc. There's every product that I've sat in, driven, ridden in, been driven by, because I think it's important for us, Lei, to specify that, yes, we've been driven by level 4 robotaxis, level 2 plus or level 2 plus intelligent driving system, semi-autonomous. So I can't tell you off the top of my head one vehicle that I've gotten in the 3 weeks or even the last 18 months in China that I could say definitively, this is a piece of shit. I haven't gotten in a lot of the lower priced that are popular in tier 2 cities, but most of those cars aren't going to make it to the United States anyways.
Yeah.
So
at least not yet. What is the intent? The intent is, one is to, same for the EU, what they've been talking about, right? The injury, right? They're using this word called injury to the domestic industry and, protect, let's say in the US, the big three. But the interesting thing is you have one of the big three or one of the half of the big three, Stellantis, shipping Leapmotor EVs utilizing their global channels, except the US, obviously. Those two things are going on at the same time, which is, right, it's interesting. I mean, the protection is not a give an edge to the US automakers or not cause injury.
Within the next 3 years, 4 years, if I'm being conservative, there's going to be Chinese IP and US made Stellantis vehicles and European made Stellantis vehicles, full stop, within 3 or 4 years. And the reason I say 3 or 4 years is because I don't know how fast Stellantis can incorporate Leapmotor's IP. That's the bottleneck. But with regards to the Shark, because there was another brand and product unveil this week that we'll talk about. The Shark is actually a hybrid. It's actually not super cheap. It's $53,000 US, and I believe they plan on manufacturing it in Mexico whenever that plant comes online. And they're going after, for those listeners who've been to Southeast Asia and Latin America, they're going after the Toyotas and the Nissans and the Hondas who, for Toyota, I think a popular truck is the Hilux. It's kind of like a Ranger size, a little bit bigger than
I was
a
thinking
Ranger.
The same thing, Ford Ranger.
Colorado, Chevy Colorado.
Chevy Colorado, yep.
So, and it's a hybrid, and 53,000 is actually pretty high priced for Mexico. So I don't know how many they plan on selling, at least initially. I think it's more or less their initial bid, not only on a price, but on a product.
Yeah, I joke that this is the only car where you can tow a trailer and karaoke at the same time.
It's full steam ahead for China EV Inc. BYD launched a vehicle, a global product debut. I think this is the first time ever for BYD outside of China, if I'm not mistaken. And the other piece that we kind of alluded to it last week was the Unveil and brand launch. A few of our friends got to attend. Unfortunately, you were busy, so you didn't get to go to that in Shanghai.
I missed it because I was on that trip, but I was following it, and we can talk a little bit about it.
It's targeting the Model Y. It's 30,000 RMB less, and it uses 900 volt architecture for fast charging. Currently, the Model Y and all Neo vehicles use 400 volt. So it's the next technology, new platform, new Neo platform. So, and it's swappable. All the characteristics that would beat a Model Y.
Well, they had sales. That slogan on the back of that camouflage vehicle, "Be Model Y Bang."
Yeah.
Remember that, right? We talked about that many episodes ago. And here's my the key words that I would people probably, when you think of Unveil, at least that's what they try to stress at the press conference, at the announcement. Here's a few key words that I took away. Family, obviously, right? If you look at the press conference, all the people that were in the audience, they had kids, small kids sitting with them, right? Family, number one. Space. Okay, space because of design, because of this new architecture. Efficiency, that one number they talked about was 12.1 kilowatt hour per 100 kilometers. And for reference, this is the target of the Mercedes CLA next generation platform that they're launching and producing in China next year. So NIO has beat Mercedes to the punch on that front. Safety, they talked a lot about safety. And then at the end of the day, affordability, right? The starting price was $219,900. NIO finally, the simple way to see this is we finally have a cheaper NIO, basically. But at the same time, calling it a mass market brand will be a misnomer because it's not. And we had talked about a couple of episodes ago that the definition of premium or mass market it's completely blurred in China. So this is not a mass market brand, but it's just a cheaper segmented NIO, but using a new brand to kind of augment it. So, and one number I wanted to share, this is family market, car market. The definition is basically the buyers are married rather than the buyers are single. This segment is the largest in China, and I think last year was just under 17 million. It's like 3/4 of the market.
Right.
So think about the TAM, right? That NIO is trying to address. It's 10, I don't know, 10, 15 times the market they're currently in, the 300,000 and above. The last thing I'll say was they compared to the RAV4 and the Model Y being the best-selling vehicle of any kind globally. The interesting thing I thought of was, China does not have a model that does that. And you wonder, will there ever be a model from China that's number one selling model globally? I'm not sure Unveil is the one to do it. I'm not sure even BYD is the one to do it. Right? Those are the things you kind of think. Because
I think if BYD was to do it, it would be the Atto 3.
Yeah, but I mean, BYD has 50, 60 models across their, 4 brands? That's the thing, kind of, right? We kind of, because they often compare their products to these incumbents, RAV4 and the Model Y. But like in China, it's just these bunch of thousands of models competing for the pie. But we don't yet see a China Model Y or China RAV4. I think that's the interesting.
Yeah, there's no clear-cut leader outside of BYD, and within BYD's product portfolio, there's just a bunch of products that are, as a whole, really push the volume. But there's, I guess, the Seal would be the big runner in China.
No, it's the Song. It's the
Song.
Yeah,
Song, sorry.
it's those. Seal is not even like up there in terms of the rankings. I think that's something maybe where I'm pointing to the if I'm being negative a little bit that the China competition, it's always, if you can't do it, you launch a new product. You launch a new product into the market and hope that it drives volume.
I just don't know. Just kind of thinking about this, taking a step back, it just seems like it's just not sustainable. And we haven't talked about the G6, but the L60 is also going to compete directly against the G6. So
yeah, and also thinking back to when NIO launched the NIO Day in 2017 versus, let's say, the Unveil Day this year, right? Unveil is standing not only on the shoulders of the RAV4 and the Model Y, but it's also standing on the shoulders of itself. That itself meaning NIO with their current swapping network, right? Which Unveil can utilize. And the tactic of using this guy, Ai who is the original ESA owner, but is really come from outside the car industry, right? With the Disney World,
and
which
I think
is about
that's
families.
okay. So, I think that's okay.
Yeah.
But it will be interesting to see if NIO can really separate the Unveil brand when they're going to be sharing swapping stations, and they're going to get aggressive. There's going to be 1,000 more swapping stations or something, no? And then 100 stores by the end of this year for Unveil.
I think that's fine, and also that the Unveil owners cannot use NIO houses. Only by NIO owners who invite them into it, they can do it. But Unveil users themselves, they cannot go into the I mean, they can go into the NIO houses, but they can't use the services, right? Unless they're accompanied by NIO owners. So that's one thing.
The other important thing is that Li Bin said that 20,000 that makes them profitable a month. So
Lofty, I think lofty expectations for the Unveil. Again, right? And then Mona will launch next month, probably lofty expectations. Just
yeah,
because now they're in that price range where it's not only the most competitive, but it's also most expected to have the most volumes.
sure. Well,
Uh,
that because Mona is going to be mass market.
yeah, and Xiaomi, right? They just delivered the 10,000s SU7. You wonder how fast Onvo or whether they can get to the level of Xiaomi, right? If Xiaomi is the new benchmark.
Well, now that Onvo, it got a ton of Western attention. I know that, but other Chinese EV brands are going to be gunning for it now. So I think that they don't look at the Model Y as the on top of the mountain anymore. It's a sale. It still sells significantly each month, but from a feature standpoint, from a pricing standpoint, it's not super competitive to what's already out there. And so how long can Tesla hold out on the SUV crossover side? Because the Model 3 has already kind of lost its steam substantially, especially now that the SU7's out and a few other sedans are
Which
doing
is
pretty well. So
the reason why they announced this new double
zero,
zero double
yeah,
zero incentive just 2 days ago.
yep. So the other thing that I want to make sure that I didn't mention this during the tariff conversation, but this whole talk of subsidies, it's important to remember that Tesla received a lot of help from the state of California and even OEMs buying credits from them. And the factory that they got in Fremont for pennies on the dollar. So they've gotten help in the United States. They've gotten help in China, subsidies, billions of dollars of subsidies. So when we talk about Chinese brands being subsidized unfairly, we also have to point to Tesla getting to where they are because early on they were subsidized. So this is not a China phenomenon, okay? And remember, GM was and Stellantis were bailed out by us. Okay. So always remember that in the back of your mind because it's not about fair competition. The countries
Well,
don't allow that. Right. So,
I mean, there's no fair competition, right? If we're being honest. I mean, if we can go all the way back to the joint ventures, right? We talk about that. Is that fair, right? There's always some form of protection or to do business. But right then you think about these things that you just talked about. Then you wonder if there a double standard. There probably is, also in China. But
the one thing that I also wanted to note, Lei, is that the Chinese government does not want foreign brands to be gone from the passenger vehicle market. That's not their goal. It would make them look business unfriendly, foreign business unfriendly. So I don't know what the magic number is from a percentage standpoint, but they need Volkswagen, GM and Toyota to at least be players in the space, even if they're weak.
yeah, at the end of the day, it's just going to be whoever comes out of the bloodbath unscathed, right? That's the game for now. No one is gonna, the China is not gonna push you out. But what Tesla has been doing, what some of the conditions of some of the U.S. brands, we know they're under stress. So it wouldn't be surprising to see some additional ones get cooked, as someone said recently in an article, right?
And let's be clear, Volkswagen and GM, Toyota to a lesser extent. I don't feel that they are. I haven't spoken to anyone about Toyota, but GM and Volkswagen in China are completely in survival mode. Again, trying to find that bottom.
Volkswagen slightly being better because they are putting on an offensive where GM is kind of still lost.
Well, I think they have 3 new products.
Yeah,
I think that's more than Volkswagen.
Yeah, but we're not seeing GM look at, what are we going to do 2026, 2 years from now, 5 years from now? We do have that at Volkswagen. They have a plan, but GM does not. They have the products. Yeah, they launched it.
But they have a plan, but Carriot freaking blew up again. So, I mean, like, to me, Volkswagen is mush, complete mush.
Yeah.
They can't believe anything they say because, at least Mary's not freaking popping off at the mouth saying we're going to do this and we're going to do that, right? Like,
well, what I'm saying is if you ask me to bet which, Volkswagen or GM, who will be the likely more successful going forward or survival, I'd pick Volkswagen, right? That's what I'm saying. But obviously,
but I don't know if they're going to be able to like reignite old glory, their past glory. And the bottom line is as well, Lei, if you're Bluma, who do you save, Porsche or Volkswagen brand in the China market? Well, because you probably can't say both.
Yeah. I don't know. Volkswagen would, if it was me, I'd probably say Volkswagen. I don't know.
It's a hard question because Porsche is the profit driver for Volkswagen Group.
That's true.
But the Volkswagen brand creates flexibility because of the volume. So these are real questions that the management teams and the boards are dealing with right now. And if I were GM, if I were Ford, I'd look at, in Mercedes, I'd look at Toyota partnering with BYD. I'd look at Stellantis partnering with Leap and Volkswagen partnering with XPeng, and look in the mirror and say, if I really want to be a player in China, I might have to partner. And who am I kicking the tires on? Because Hi-Fi, they obviously don't have any significant IP or a manufacturing presence or, like anything that, because if they did, then somebody would have picked them up already. So that's the most interesting thing, right, Lei? It's like, well, one thing that we should mention as well is that FAW has also signed up now.
Was that officially announced, or was that rumored?
I think
it was not. It's not yet officially announced, but it's coming. I guess that's the
forthcoming.
Yeah, I think it's forthcoming. Yeah. So,
and who is FAW? Who's one of FAW's joint venture partners? Volkswagen.
Sure, but yeah.
So there's going to be more speculation about Volkswagen kicking the tires on battery swapping, at least for the China market. So,
and the interesting thing is, so GAC signed a deal with NIO, and a few days later, just earlier this week, GAC, I think specifically the Ion brand, is also signed a deal with CATL on their battery swapping ecosystem. So it's really getting interesting. I think the NIO one is with Hyper.
Yeah,
like right. There's these details of how they're different, but
we can put to bed battery swapping is not a thing in China. Battery swapping is going to be a thing in China.
Yeah, I must mention this. So speaking of battery swapping, the perspective I had was on our road trip, we saw a few NIO battery swapping station. And this time, I took the investors to that one that I said tweeted was a jackpot. All of this time, I'm also going to, on the road in other places. Whenever I saw a NIO battery swapping station, it wasn't idle. There was a NIO doing the battery swapping,
right?
Which was the interesting thing that tells me that they're happening. They're not just there for being there. If every time I visited, I could see a NIO doing the battery swapping, then right.
So utilization's high.
Yeah, so I think the number I've heard was they're doing. I visited F2, right, as part of that trip, and they did a talk. This young guy, I think he said 80,000 per day right now being added to that number. So it's like, I don't know, close to 45 million now total swaps. So I mean, it's happening, right? And not even counting the other ones, the Evergo, right? The Hyper has one.
And
Geely
honestly,
has one.
it sounds like the Chinese government told SOEs to get in line, fall in line. So, because outside of Geely, they're all SOEs.
Yeah, so
But
it'll be interesting to see going forward. We see the BYD taxis charging on the Zeekr chargers. It'll be interesting to see the Geelys and the GAC Hypers swapping at the NIO swapping stations.
the last thing I want to talk about, Lei, is Baidu had an event in Wuhan unveiling the production version of the RT6. So RT stands for robotaxi. 6 is their 6th generation. They had unveiled it last year around this time and said that it was going to be a 240,000 RMB cost.
I think it was 2 years ago, 2022.
Is it 2 years ago? Okay.
Yeah. But now they finally put it onto the road, I guess. Yeah.
There will be 1,000 of them by the end of this year in Wuhan. And the cost now has gone down to 200,000.
Yeah, they actually showed a invoice.
Yeah, Fapiao. Yeah, I saw that. So this is China. We see Cruise, we see the Zeekr, Waymo, robotaxi. Those aren't likely at a 200,000 RMB price point, but they can't be that far off.
And then now, just yesterday, WeRide, Pony, and I'm not sure, maybe Baidu also, maybe it's forthcoming. They just got the permit to test the robot taxis from the Beijing Southway railway station. Now that is in the city center. It's not in Yizhuang anymore.
So the Beijing South Station is about an hour's drive to city center, to CBD, sorry.
Yeah, it's basically on the southern part of the second ring road. Well, between the southern part of the second ring road and the southern part of the third ring road. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So these are progressing. We
very close to Tiananmen. So,
yeah. But again, the other thing to stress is that L4 is not making money, and that's why you see these re-rides. You see the previously deep route. They're going to the level 2 plus. Which is
but Baidu said they're break even. They're break even with Luobo in 2025.
Okay. So. Well, I mean, the few times we took a ride, they're still giving steep subsidies.
So
right?
Yeah, they ate a lot of that cost or price. So maybe they're forecasting a tremendous increase in volume on the number of rides then. So. Man, that's all I had. I know you've been kind of running around, so that's all I had this week, man.
Yeah, and then the last thing, I'll just say maybe a little bit of testimonial of my recent trip. This trip, I took a few investors to visit 5 cities in 5 days and 8 companies. And I think the only thing it was very inspiring for me. It was not to see these gadgets, technology, or the products. It was really talking to the talent from these companies, whether it was at the CFO level, whether it was just at the engineering level. This is what makes China tick, right? Why they're ahead, why the EVs are. I think these talent behind these companies, and many of them are very international, speak English, right? If you don't visit them, you don't know. And this is, talking to them was very inspirational for me. Although I knew these companies before, but having spoken to these people, right, it's you kind of get an understanding of why China is ahead on so many fronts. And we visited BYD yesterday, and we've only scratched the surface of what we saw, of what they can do.
Yes, but BYD, I think BYD is different. They're an overnight sensation that took 30 years, right? 20 something years, right?
Yeah.
So.
And not every one of these companies is going to be, stay successful, right? Some will be cooked as well, but
I think to be quite frank, Lei, you have a much more positive view on LiDAR than I do. I think LiDAR is going to be commoditized very quickly. I think Hesai, RoboSense, these companies are going to go away or get acquired or
okay.
Yeah.
I'm not as negative, but Yeah. Well, I mean, we visited two LiDAR companies. I'll just say this. One is certainly more, the difference was pretty clear of, the company culture and the numbers they talked about. It's certainly different. And you kind of tell why one right now, at least right now, is much ahead in terms of volumes than the other one. So,
And remember that Luminar is getting rid of 10%,
well,
what,
Tesla bought
20%?
some Luminars, right? LiDARs.
Yeah. So, yeah, man. But that's my point is not that they're not going to use LiDAR. My point is that it's going to be commoditized. So there's not going to be a ton of value add. And so, and there's a high likelihood that it's going to get bifurcated. So they're going to get cut out of certain markets. There's a decent chance of that happening.
Yeah,
I know that
yeah.
Hesai is suing the U.S. government right now for falsely claiming that they are supplying to the military or funded by the military or something like that. So,
Well, let's just say this. So the Xiaomi Su7 has the Hesai LiDAR. Their second or third model may have an LiDAR from someone else. So let's just say that.
yeah, no, I mean, there's going to be survivors from the LiDAR space. I just don't know if they're all going to survive. And to your point, you said there's a clear leader or kind of like mature company. Hey, everyone, thanks for joining us. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We will talk with you all next week. That brings us to the end of this week's show. Lei and I thank you for tuning in. My name is Tu Lee, and you can find me on Twitter at Sino Auto Insight. That's SinoAutoInsight. You can find Lei on Twitter at LeiXing77. That's LEIXING77. If you wouldn't mind rating and or reviewing us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you grab your podcast from, we'd appreciate that as well. Even better, if you enjoy this show, please tell your friends about it. Please join us again next week as we track down all the latest news on China, EVs, and more.